What is up, BookTube? It is Monty, and today I'm finally here to talk about Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. Fair warning, it is currently like maybe 15 minutes to 11 on a Tuesday. I just got back from a book signing at the Ripped Bodice, but it's late, so my brain is like everywhere but here. But I've put off this video long enough, and I want to talk about this book before I sort of have all of the things I want to talk about fade into the ether. So we're going to get through this. You and I, go grab a snack, make sure your water bottle is full, stay hydrated, that is very important. But let's get into it. If you don't know, basic plot summary, Infinity Sun is really the story of two brothers, Emil and Brighton Ray, in a contemporary fantasy world. I guess that's the new lingo we're going with in the publishing world. Urban fantasy is out, contemporary fantasy is in, but essentially it's just like our world, except there's magic. We have basically two kinds of people with magical abilities. You have the Celestials, who are born with their magic, and then you have the Spectres, who use blood alchemy and the blood of magical creatures to take in that creature's ability and exist. We also have two other character perspectives. In this, we have Ness, who is a shapeshifter, and you have Maribel. But like I said, the story is really about Brighton and Emil Ray, who are brothers, they turn 18 in the very beginning of the book. They celebrate a birthday, and the story kind of goes from there, in that birthday is obviously a turning point, not just because it's their 18th birthday, but something has to kick off the events of this book, and that's what does it here. I think that Adam Silvera has never been the kind of person that is going to give you complete world building. And I say that as someone who has They Both Die at the End on their favorite books of all time list. This is a soft sci-fi novel. It's sort of speculative. Again, it's our world, but a slight tweak, and we don't ever really get explanation as to the slight tweak. You just have to accept it as part of the reality. Much like in Infinity Sun, the fantastical elements, I think, are explained well enough. I think that every new term that Adam Silvera introduces, he gives an in-text, immediate description of what that means. Much like the case with the Gilded Wolves and Roshani Chakshi, I'm getting the sense that authors of color, Adam Silvera is Puerto Rican, they don't get to just invent things and have it be cited in the text without people saying that it's confusing or hard to understand. I never got that. I thought that in Infinity Sun, all of the terminologies were readily available to me. I felt that everything was explained, the terms were explained thoroughly. I am a slut for like in-depth world building, so I will always want a little bit more, even though, you know, fantasy isn't my demographic genre. But I think that in terms of the terms that he created, I thought they were well explained. And in terms of the events of the book, I thought that it was fine and dandy. But what bothered me was that Infinity Sun has no plot. And I say that in that Infinity Sun does not set up a series. Infinity Sun sets up the first half of a singular narrative. I do think that I went into this book a little bit biased in the terms of, one, I'd only really heard negative reviews about the book, but two, I follow Adam on social media. No book of his has ever lived up to They Both Die at the End. I've tried to stop measuring his works against that book. It's not fair to them. But I went into this knowing that Adam wanted the Infinity Cycle to be a trilogy. It currently has a 2-book deal, so we're only for sure getting 2. I haven't heard any news of a 3rd book coming from this yet. Who knows? I don't... You know, I pay attention, but I don't pay that close of attention. And I think I would have noticed if that was going to be a thing. So I was reading this with the mindset, you know, in the back of my mind, like, Adam wants 3 books out of this. And what I walked away with was, I think Adam has 1 book in this world. And if Infinity Son had been 600 pages, instead of cleaving the one book into two to give us a duology, I think because the book ends in such a way that it really is the climax of the first book, because we spend a lot of this book building toward that. That moment that happens at the end of this book, and then when it kind of happens, it's like we should be able to keep going to see the ramifications, but we have to wait until the second book to do that. And while I think you can definitely end your book in a cliffhanger way that sets up a second book, or you can end a second book that sets up a third book, or whatever number in a series you're doing, but I think that that book has to still have an arc, and I don't think that Infinity Son does. I think that it has character arcs. The character work here, I think, is really the standout. But I also think that Adam Silvera just does really well with characters. And so if you are not a character-driven reader, then the plot that is given, like the narrative steps along the arc of the character growth, I think can be a little bit of a letdown. I also think that this is a very trope-heavy fantasy series. None of the elements that are introduced in the narrative, I think, are unique to Adam Silvera. But I do think that he explores them in a way that I think is still entertaining and is still fun to read about, even if they aren't, wholly original, like I said, ideas. But I also, again, it falls back on this thing where these white authors can play with the same kind of tropes in every book that they publish, but you have Adam Silvera, a Puerto Rican man, coming in to do the same thing, and we're like, well, I've seen this in X-Men, I've seen this in this fantasy genre. And it's like, well, yeah, these exist, but I don't think I've seen them handled quite this way, in this sort of configuration. And even if I had seen them in this configuration before, I still think that Adam plays with them in a way that I still enjoyed the character moments, even though I was waiting for a connective tissue or a through line for the duology. And I don't think I ever got that. And I feel that even in the fact that Infinity Son doesn't have a point A to point B arc, again, that's not an issue for me, because I think that it really is just indicative of his contemporary roots. So in 2019, I read the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy. To me, To All the Boys and P.S. I Still Love You are really one book. I found out after I read them that this was originally published as a duology. Just these two books, all that existed. And these two books cover the same school year. They pick up directly where the other one left off, and they're both relatively short. Infinity Son is following the same template as this duology. It's not following your standard fantasy template, even though it's set in a fantasy world with fantasy characters doing fantastical things. It is still rooted in a contemporary basis. And so I feel like I'm busting out all kinds of insert mortarboard gift scenes here. This, I think, is a template for what Adam Silvera is doing. And when I use this yardstick, it's fine. And so, to me, I think that, is it the best fantasy book that I've ever read? No, it's not. It's not. But at the end of the day, I think that it's fine. And I say that. I'm saying all of that, and I still gave this book 2 stars, which is the same thing that I gave The Cruel Prince. It's the same thing I gave many a Shadowhunter book. I don't think that it is worse than any of the negative opinions I've had about any of those series, but I also don't think it's exponentially better. I think that it fits in perfectly with its contemporaries. I think that if you were to judge them all on the same baseline, I think that there's a space for Infinity Son to exist, and I think that it occupies the space that it does fill well. I think that it does a lot of interesting things, and I think that it brings a lot to the table. I just think that you have to go into it not expecting some kind of high fantasy, we're not out here crafting, entire worlds from the written word. That's just not what Adam set out to do. And I think that to judge a book for not doing what it didn't set out to do is fucked up. And I'm gonna end the video here because my battery is starting to die and I still need to import this footage. Also, the air's kicking on. So that means I've definitely rambled for long enough. Thanks for watching. If you've read Infinity Son, please leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. I will leave a link to my written review that I posted on Goodreads, which is slightly more coherent and written right after I finished the book. So it might be, you know the drill, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon in another video, whenever that happens to be. But until then, and until next time, bye.